There's a book I read and it said these ships are known only to God, but now we know where the Grayback is.
The Grayback, you can even see the plaque intact after all these years. Tim Taylor and wife Christine Dennison discovered it with their team as part of their Lost 52 project.
The ocean remembers what nations forget, and in the quiet miles beyond the shipping lanes, a single mistake in a wartime ledger kept an entire story hidden beneath the waves. When modern explorers returned to the coordinates corrected by one digit, they found a submarine preserved in darkness, holding the final echoes of a moment the world never heard. A vanishing in wartime waters. In the early months of 1944, the Pacific War had become a relentless contest of endurance, and every submarine patrol carried the weight of shifting front lines and dwindling margins for error. The USS Grayback, already celebrated for its successes against Japanese shipping, departed on what was expected to be another demanding but routine mission, threading its way through contested waters where aircraft, mines, and coded patrol routes created a constantly shifting battlefield. Families back home followed each report with a mixture of pride and silent anxiety, knowing that submarines often operated far beyond immediate rescue, and their silence could mean either disciplined radio protocol or irreversible disaster. When the Grayback failed to report from its designated check-in point, naval intelligence relied on a translated Japanese entry describing a bomb strike on a submarine in a specific region of the East China Sea, and this document shaped every assumption about the boat's fate. For decades, search operations returned to those coordinates with unwavering confidence, even as repeated dives revealed only mud plains and scattered coral structures. Each unsuccessful mission intensified the mystery, deepening the emotional weight carried by families who never received definitive answers about the crew's final moments. Their uncertainty formed the quiet background to a larger story of how wartime paperwork shaped collective memory. The one-digit error that misled the world. The turning point emerged in 2018, when Japanese historian Yutaka Iwasaki revisited the original handwritten naval logs rather than relying on their long-accepted translations. While examining the entry describing the attack on an unidentified submarine, he noticed that a single longitude digit in the American transcription differed subtly from the character in the wartime document, and this small discrepancy carried enormous consequences. A 1-degree shift in longitude displaced the presumed sinking site by nearly 100 miles, which meant every prior search had targeted a region with no historical or physical connection to the Grayback's disappearance. This revelation reframed 75 years of effort, demonstrating how human error can shape entire chapters of naval history, especially when conflict and urgency compress the conditions under which records are created. Once the corrected coordinates were verified, marine archaeologists recognized that the overlooked sector fell within a rugged seafloor corridor, seldom mapped in high resolution. And this detail provided new optimism for investigators who had previously exhausted more accessible regions. The discovery also encouraged collaboration between archivists, naval historians, and deep ocean engineers who understood that resolving the location required both meticulous document analysis and advanced remote-operated technology. As preparations began for a new expedition, researchers acknowledged that the corrected coordinate did more than refine a map. It shifted the emotional atmosphere surrounding the long-lost crew. Families who had lived with unanswered questions saw, for the first time, a credible path toward closure, and search teams prepared to confront a seafloor environment that might finally reveal what had remained obscured by a single mistranslated stroke of ink. Descending into the midnight zone. When the Lost 52 project mobilized its expedition toward the corrected coordinates, the team understood that the search would demand a combination of technological precision and emotional restraint, because deep-sea discovery often reveals both mechanical remnants and abrupt reminders of human lives interrupted. Their vessel deployed autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with high-frequency sonar, stabilized cameras, and pressure-resistant housings engineered to withstand the immense force found more than 1,000 feet below the surface. As the machines began their descent, the water darkened from blue to slate and finally to complete blackness, creating a sensory void broken only by the quiet hum of thrusters echoing across the hull. Operating in the midnight zone required constant vigilance, since currents could tilt equipment unexpectedly, and sediment clouds could distort sonar signatures into misleading shapes. The drone mapped the seafloor in deliberate sweeps, revealing ridges, volcanic outcrops, and long stretches of sand, shaped by centuries of shifting tides. For several hours, the screens on the support vessel displayed only geological formations. Yet each contour carried the possibility of concealing a structure warped by time. Researchers watched these images with the disciplined patience required for deep-sea archaeology, knowing that meaningful discovery rarely announces itself clearly. Eventually, the sonar captured an elongated shadow whose symmetry contrasted sharply with the surrounding terrain. As the vehicle approached, its lights revealed metal plating rising from the seabed, and the outline of a conning tower emerged through suspended particles drifting in the water. The atmosphere aboard the research ship shifted from cautious concentration to quiet recognition, because the structure's proportions matched those of a Gado-class submarine. When the drone illuminated the corroded letters spelling Grayback, the team understood they had reached a place where wartime uncertainty finally intersected with verifiable history, and the moment carried a weight shaped by decades of unanswered questions. Reconstructing the final battle. As the drone traced the length of the submarine, the visible damage began to reveal a sequence of events shaped by urgency, discipline, and the unforgiving mechanics of underwater warfare. The torn steel behind the conning tower aligned precisely with the Japanese pilot's report of a direct bomb strike, and the deformation radiating outward from the impact zone suggested that the explosion occurred while the submarine remained on the surface, preparing or attempting to complete a dive. The deck gun, still angled upward, indicated that the crew had chosen to engage the attacking aircraft rather than immediately submerge, which reflected tactical decisions shaped by battery levels, sea conditions, and the narrow window available to react during airborne assault. Investigators noted that the forward hatch stood fully open, a detail implying that men had been transitioning between interior and exterior stations at the moment of the blast. And this single structural position explained the rapid flooding that would have followed. The dive planes were set to a steep downward angle, which confirmed that the crew attempted an emergency descent even as water surged into compartments, creating a sequence where human effort collided with mechanical limits. Every element visible on the hull pointed to a battle fought with determination, yet constrained by the physics of buoyancy and pressure. Among the most striking contextual findings came from historical hydrophone logs, which documented a secondary underwater shock several hours after the reported attack. This acoustic signature matched what engineers recognize as a pressure hull collapse occurring at extreme depth, meaning that Japanese listening stations inadvertently recorded the final structural failure of the Grayback. This detail added an unexpected layer of timeline clarity, linking wartime documentation directly to the wreckage and underscoring how the ocean preserved echoes of a moment that no Allied listener ever received. Inside, a frozen moment in history. When the drone's cameras moved beyond the shattered hull plates and into the exposed interior, the atmosphere aboard the research vessel shifted from analytical concentration to a profound stillness, because the conditions within the wreck revealed a level of preservation rarely encountered in wartime archaeology. The cold, low-oxygen environment of the deep sea had slowed biological decay to such an extent that many personal objects still rested exactly where the crew had left them, creating the impression that life aboard the submarine had been interrupted rather than erased. Headsets remained positioned near consoles, tools lay neatly along engineering benches, and navigational instruments kept their final readings sealed beneath layers of fine sediment. Researchers recognized that the arrangement of these items reflected not randomness, but routine, since each workstation appeared frozen at the point where its operator had attempted to follow established emergency procedures during the chaotic transition from surface engagement to uncontrolled descent. The emotional impact of witnessing these details stemmed not from sensationalism, but from the quiet dignity implied by the orderliness of the environment, which suggested that the crew acted with the practiced discipline characteristic of submarine service, even as conditions deteriorated rapidly. The interior also illustrated how environmental stillness can shape historical interpretation, because the absence of strong currents allowed delicate materials to persist for decades, offering insights into daily operations aboard the vessel and the rhythms of life within its confined compartments. These observations transform the wreck from a distant wartime abstraction into a tangible human space, inviting viewers to consider how the final actions of the crew connected to the broader narrative of submariners who operated in isolation beneath hostile seas. As researchers documented these scenes, they prepared to place the Grayback within the larger legacy of American submarines lost during the conflict. The 41 still missing. The discovery of the Grayback inevitably redirected attention toward the wider constellation of submarines still unlocated, because its recovery demonstrated how archival imperfections and incomplete seafloor mapping continue to obscure the fates of numerous wartime vessels. During the Second World War, the United States lost 52 submarines, each carrying crews who operated in remote environments where radio silence, mechanical vulnerability, and shifting operational orders created circumstances that often prevented accurate final position reports. Although several of these wrecks have been identified through combined archival and technological efforts, 41 remain undiscovered, and many researchers now believe that transcription errors similar to the Graybacks may conceal the true locations of multiple boats. This possibility has led historians and engineers to revisit reconnaissance logs, encrypted communication fragments, and hand-drawn wartime charts that were previously considered resolved, since a single misinterpreted symbol or incorrectly converted coordinate could create decades of misdirected searching. Families of the missing crews have followed these developments with renewed attention, because each discovery offers both closure and historical clarification, allowing official records to replace speculation that accumulated over generations. The Grayback's identification strengthened the argument that patient archival review, combined with modern sonar and autonomous deepwater vehicles, can eventually reveal the resting places of vessels long assumed irretrievable. As research organizations examine additional candidate regions, they acknowledge that the ocean's scale and complexity will continue to challenge even the most sophisticated technologies. Nevertheless, the successful correction of the Grayback's coordinates has transformed uncertainty into possibility, marking a significant step toward resolving the silence surrounding the remaining submarines still awaiting discovery on the ocean floor. The Grayback rose from silence because one corrected digit redirected history, allowing a long-hidden story to finally surface. If you want more documentaries that merge deep-sea science with human memory, subscribe and join us for the next exploration where past and present meet beneath the waves.